Dear students and my teacher friends, Namaskar. I welcome you to the presentation lecture on pectoral girdle. Now the first question, how many pectoral girdles are there in our body? So the answer is there are two pectoral girdle. For example, this one and this one. Okay, this one is shown in the posterior view, and over here from the back side of the thoracic cavity or the rib cage, as we can see this pectoral girdle. So both the pectoral girdle they are present on the dorsal side of our body. Okay, so when we are viewing anteriorly, for example in this figure, so this is the rib cage. Behind the rib cage, this pectoral girdle is present, and this is the dorsal surface of our body, and this is the pectoral girdle. So we can say in our body there are two pectoral girdle, and what the role these pectoral girdles are playing in our body. So they are attaching the bones of the upper limb to the axial skeleton. But the question is how they are attaching the bones of upper limb to the axial skeleton. For example, this is our arm bone, and this arm bone is known as the humerus. Now this humerus, as you can see, is joining to the scapula, and with the scapula the clavicle is joined, and this clavicle articulates with the sternum. So this is how the arm bone is joining the axial skeleton. So the sternum, rib cage, these are included in the axial skeleton. So the humerus is in this way we can say it is joining the axial skeleton. So this is the meaning of this first line. Moving on the second point. Now what is there in the pectoral girdle? What the pectoral girdle is made up of? So in the pectoral girdle there are two bones are present. One bone, this one is known as the scapula, and the other bone is known as the clavicle. For example, this one is the scapula, and this bone is known as the clavicle. So second point, in each pectoral girdle there is a clavicule and scapula. Okay, now here this point is regarding the joints. So as you can see over here, two joints, one is acromioclavicular joint, and the second one is the glenohumeral joint. Now as you can see, this is the clavicle. Okay, and this clavicle is joining the scapula. Okay, so the clavicle, where it is joining the scapula, that joint, that articulation is known as the acromioclavicular joint. And this joint, this one is the head of humerus, and this is the scapula. So the joint between the scapula and the head of humerus, this joint is known as the glenohumeral or the shoulder joint. So this was the fourth point. Okay, by mistake I have explained the fourth point. No problem. Now we are moving on the third point. So this was the first point, this is second point, and the fourth point there are two joints. Now moving on the third point. Now third point is again regarding the joint. This one is the clavicle. This is also clavicle, and this one is the manubrium of the sternum. So the clavicle, this clavicle is articulating with the manubrium of the sternum. So the joint between the manubrium and the clavicle, for example this joint, okay, so this joint is known as the sternoclavicular joint. For example, this one is the sternoclavicular joint, and here also the joint is there, but we cannot see that joint because here they are showing the ligament. So we are remembering the name of the ligament, that the anterior sternoclavicular ligament. And this ligament, where they are present? So between the clavicle and the manubrium. So they are joining the clavicle and the manubrium. So this is the third point, this is the theory point, this is the figure. Fourth point I have already explained to you. Now moving on the fifth point. Now the bones of the pectoral girdle. Okay, so we know that in the pectoral girdle there is a clavicle is there and the scapula is there. So first we are discussing the clavicle. We are not reading this as the clavicle because we need to read this as a clavicule, and clavicule equal to key. So as you can see, the shape of the clavicule is a key shape. Okay, now each clavicle is slender, S shape. As you can see, it is having the S shape, and this clavicle is also known as the collar bone. Okay, so when we are wearing the shirt, so just beneath our shirt's collar, this bone is present, clavicle. Okay, and where exactly this clavicle is present in our body? So this clavicle lies horizontally across the anterior part of the thorax and superior to first rib. This is our thoracic cavity, horizontal to thoracic cavity. Okay, and superior to this one and this one, first rib. So superior to first rib, clavicle is present. So with this we have completed the fifth point. This is the theory point, this is the position. Now you observe the clavicle, all the names. Okay, so these are the clavicle. Okay, now moving on the sixth point. Now this point is regarding the ends of the clavicle. So as we can see, the clavicle is having two ends, this end and this end. Okay, so the medial end, also known as sternal end. So this one is the sternal end. Okay, and this sternal end, as you can see, it is round. So here we can see it is the round one, and this sternal end articulates with the manubrium of the sternum. This sternal end of clavicle joins the manubrium of the sternum, and that joint is known as sternoclavicular joint. So now let's see this joint in the figure. Okay. So the name of the joint in the theory point, sternoclavicle. Now here also it is written sternoclavicle. This is the clavicle and this is the round end. This round end is known as the sternal end. This is the sternum. This is the manubrium of the sternum, and as you can see, this manubrium is articulating with the sternal end of the clavicle, and this joint, which is formed between the sternal end of the clavicle and the manubrium of the sternum, this joint is known as the sternoclavicular joint. So you go through this. This is the theory point. Okay, I have explained this point, and this is the figure. So this joint and this joint. Okay, so this is the 6th point of our discussion. Now moving on the 7th point of our discussion. So this is the 7th point. Now the broad flat lateral end, the acromial end. First let's see the acromial end of the clavicle. Broad flat end, this end. Now where this end is articulating and which joint it is forming. So here it is written, acromial end articulates with the acromion of the scapula. For example, this one is the scapula. Okay, and this process, you see this process. This process is the acromion. Okay, and this one is the clavicle, and this is the broad flat end. So this broad flat end of clavicle is known as the acromial end, and this is the acromion of scapula. So between the acromion and the acromial end of clavicle, this articulation, this joint that is formed, the name of this joint is the acromioclavicular joint. So this is the acromioclavicular joint. One more figure is there so that you can understand this thing properly. Okay, so this is the broad flat end, and this is the acromion of the scapula. So the broad end of the clavicle and the acromion, they are joining at the point of acromioclavicular joint. Okay, so we can say, in other words, that the joint which is formed between the acromial end of clavicle and the acromion of the scapula, that joint is known as acromioclavicular joint. So this joint is the acromioclavicular joint. So I am showing you, this is the theory point, and for this theory point, this is the figure, and This is the figure. Okay. So now moving on the 8th point of our discussion. Now, conoid tubercle. First, we are understanding this theory point, and then I am showing you this conoid tubercle in the figure. So, where this conoid tubercle is present? Inferior surface of the lateral end of the bone. Inferior surface. Okay. Of the lateral end of the bone is a point of attachment for conoid ligament. First of all, conoid tubercle. Let's find out where it is. Okay. For example, this. Here you can see conoid tubercle. This is conoid tubercle. Okay, at the inferior end of the clavicle it is present, conoid tubercle. And to this conoid tubercle, what is attaching? Green color. Conoid ligament is attaching to this conoid tubercle. What this conoid ligament is doing? What it is doing? So conoid ligament attach clavicle and scapula. Okay. Conoid ligament is attaching the clavicle and scapula. How? This one is the clavicle. This one is the scapula. Conoid ligament. This one is the conoid ligament. So conoid ligament is present between the clavicle and scapula. And conoid ligament is attached to both the structures, both the bone, that is the clavicle and the scapula. So in this figure we have learned about the conoid ligament, and in this theory point what we are remembering? Conoid tubercle, where it is present, and what is attaching to this tubercle? Conoid ligament. What this conoid ligament is doing? So it is attaching clavicle and scapulae. So this is the 8th point of our discussion. Now moving on the 9th point of our discussion. Now, as its name, similar to its name, impression for the costoclavicular ligament on the inferior surface of the sternal end is a point for the attachment of costoclavicular ligament. Now I know this is a bit difficult what they are talking, but it is very easy. See, first you observe the sternal end, then you look to the inferior surface of the sternal end, and what you will find? Impression for the costoclavicular ligament. Let's see in the figure. So this point is actually, this entire point is discussing this thing. This is the sternal end. Inferior to sternal end, impression is present. Which impression? Impression for costoclavicular ligament. To this impression, what is attaching? With this impression, what is attaching? Costoclavicular ligament is attaching, green color. Now what this ligament, costoclavicular ligament, is doing? So it is attaching clavicle and first rib. So costoclavicular ligament we can say it is present between the clavicle and the first rib. So let's see in the figure. This is the clavicle. This one is the first rib. So between the clavicle and the first rib, costoclavicular ligament is present. So it is attaching the clavicle and the first rib. So this was the ninth point. This is the theory point, and these are the figures. You go through all these figures. Okay, I am scrolling slowly so that you can go through all the names. Okay, this one. Now moving on the 10th point of our discussion. Now this is regarding the scapula. So the plural is scapulae, okay, and singular scapula. So now the shape. First they are talking about the shape. So you observe the shape of the scapula. So we have discussed about the clavicle, and now we are starting the discussion of the scapula. So scapula is the shoulder blade. It is large, and as we have seen that it is having the triangular shape, and at the same time it is flat. Where it is present? Situated in the superior part of the posterior thorax and between the levels of 2nd and 7th rib. Clavicle, posterior thorax, superior to it, above the surface of this thoracic cavity, and between the level of 2nd to 7th rib. So this is rib number 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So between the rib number 2 to 7, the scapula is present. It is triangular, it is a blade like. Okay, so this is the meaning. So this is the meaning of the 10th point. This is the theory point. This is the figure. Moving on the 11th point of our discussion. Now here they are talking about the ridge. Now the prominent ridge, that is known as spine, and it is running diagonally in the scapula on the posterior surface. So this prominent ridge of the scapula, which is present on posterior surface and running diagonally, this ridge is known as spine. So 11th point is regarding the spine. This is the theory point, and this is the location of the spine. Okay, now moving on the 12th point. Now 12th point is related with the acromion. So first observe the acromion, where exactly this acromion is present. Okay, you observe the acromion, and now this is the theory point. Okay, so the lateral end of the spine project as a flat expanded process, and this flat expanded process is known as acromion. Okay, and this we can felt this acromion easily on the high point of our shoulder. So we know when we touch the high point of our shoulder, so that time we can feel this acromion. And nowadays we are wearing the ready-made shirt, but in earlier times we used to go to visit the tailor shop for our shirts, and we were giving the measurement to the tailors. So the tailor, by the time the tailor start the measurement to stitch our shirt, the first thing he was doing that he was placing his measure tape on our acromion. So that is the meaning of this point. Okay, so this is regarding the acromion. So 12th point was for the acromion. Now moving on the point number 13. This is the point number 13. We have actually this point has repeated over here. So once again I have already explained this point, okay, but somehow it is repeated. So this joint we have already learned about the acromioclavicular joint. Okay, so now moving forward on the point number 14. Okay, and this is also very simple point. This is the acromion. This one is the acromion of the scapulae. Inferior to the acromion, there is a shallow depression. So I am showing you. As you can see, this shallow depression. So this is acromion. So inferior to acromion, shallow depression is there, and this shallow depression is known as the glenoid cavity. Okay, this is known as the glenoid cavity. And what this glenoid cavity is doing, so it is accepting the head of the humerus. Okay, for example, this is the glenoid cavity, and at the same time this glenoid cavity is accepting the head of the humerus. Okay, so the joint which is formed between the glenoid cavity and the head of the humerus, that joint is known as the glenohumeral joint or the shoulder joint. So this is the theory point, and this is the explanation in the figure. So you go through this point and observe this part. Okay, now moving on the point number 15. Now point number 15 is something related with the edges of the scapula. Okay, now first medial border. So I'm showing you, this is the medial border. Now what is medial border? Thin edge of the scapula. This is the scapula. This is the thin edge of the scapula. So this thin edge is known as the medial border. Where it is present, this medial border, closer to the vertebral column. Okay, then in the scapula, thick edge is also present. This is the, for example, this one is the, as you can see, this is the thick edge. This thick edge is known as lateral or the axillary border. So this is the lateral or the axillary border. Now this medial border and the axillary border, they are joining to each other. They are joining. Okay, so where these two borders are joining, that point, okay, is known as the inferior angle. So we can say the inferior angle is present between the medial border and the lateral border. So this was the 15th point of our discussion. This is the theory point, and this one is the figure. Okay, now moving on the 16th point of our discussion. Now here they are talking about the superior edge of this scapula, and it is known as the superior border. This one is the superior edge of scapula, and it is known as this edge is known as the superior border. This superior border is joining the medial border. So now we know this one is the medial border. Okay, and where this superior border is joining with the medial border, so at their junction superior angle is present. Okay, so you can see superior, this is the superior border. Okay, and this is the medial border, this is superior border. So this point is known as the superior angle. Now here one notch is present. Okay, one groove is present, one hollow or the empty part is there. So this part, okay, so which is present at the end of the superior border. So this part is known as the scapular notch, and from this notch one nerve is passing. So what is the name of this nerve? Suprascapular nerve. So with this we have completed the 16th point of our discussion. This is the theory point and you need to observe this part. Okay, now moving on the point number 17. Now 17th point is, for example, here in the 17th point we are going to discuss about the coracoid process. So first you observe where exactly this coracoid process are present. So this one and this one. Okay, so on the left hand side we are viewing the scapula posteriorly, and this one on right hand side, this is the lateral view of scapula, and you observe where exactly the coracoid process is present. Now what is this coracoid process, where it is present? So the lateral end of the superior border of the scapula, there is a projection of the anterior surface of scapula, and that is known as the coracoid process. So coracoid means, so the shape of the coracoid process, this shape. Okay, so it looks like the beak of the crow. Okay, so the coracoid process is, the shape of the coracoid process is like a crow's beak. Now India, the crow, they are known as the kawa, and in my state, that is the Gujarat, and I live in Ahmedabad city, so these crows are known as the kagda. Okay, now so this is the coracoid process, and which are the structures that attach to this coracoid process. So here some names are written. Okay, so the tendons of muscles, so you remember this: pectoralis, minor muscle, then this, these three muscles, they are attaching to coracoid process, and some ligaments. Okay, so these ligaments, they are attaching to this coracoid process. Now I know this is a bit difficult for you, so Now you have to remember this thing, but for this I will show you one figure so you will get the idea. For example, in this figure, okay, coracoid process, okay, and as you can see, some muscles are attached and the ligaments are also attached to this coracoid process. Okay, so this was the 17th point of our discussion regarding the coracoid process. Now moving on the last and final point of our discussion, that is the point number 18. Now first, now on the posterior surface of the scapula, some depressions are present, and these depressions are known as the fossa. So one is supraspinous fossa. For example, this one is the supraspinous fossa, and what is attached to this supraspinous fossa? So supraspinatus muscle of the shoulder. So this is the empty space, okay, this fossa. And now if I draw the muscle, if I cover this with the muscle, so those muscles are known as the supraspinated muscle, and they are of the shoulder. So in the figure we are going to observe this for example, this, see, okay, these are the supraspinatus muscle. And if we remove this muscle, so if we remove this muscle, then it will be supraspinatus fossa. Okay, now one more fossa is there, okay, and that fossa is known as the infraspinous fossa. So this is the infraspinous fossa, and what is there present in this infraspina fossa? So infraspinated muscle of the shoulder, they are present. So now let's see this fossa and how these muscles are attached. So this, you can see, these are the infraspinatus muscle. These are all infraspinatus muscle. And if we remove this muscle, okay, if we remove this muscle, then we will look at infraspinatus fossa. Okay, so this is something regarding the fossa. So we have completed the discussion of two fossas, and now the final point. Okay, now one more fossa is there, okay, and it is present on the anterior surface of the scapula, okay, and that fossa is known as the subscapular fossa. And in this fossa, subscapularis muscles are there, okay. So let's find out this fossa, subscapularis fossa. So here you can see subscapularis muscles are shown, okay. Now if I remove these muscles, so what you will observe, can you see this? We have removed the muscle, so this is this part is subscapularis fossa, okay, and when these are the muscles, so these are the subscapularis muscles. So this is the 18th point of our discussion. Okay, I am showing you this entire point number 18, and this is the figure. Okay, and this figure. Okay, now before I wind up this presentation lecture, I would like to show you all the figure one by one. Okay, so you go through all the figure. Okay, and this point is here. And this figure. And this figure. This one. And this figure. Then this figure. Then this is the X-ray. You go through all the name. Okay. And then all the muscles. If you are interested, you can go through this. And this figure. So with this, we have completed the discussion of the pectoral girdle. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation lecture, and I hope this presentation lecture will be helpful in your studies and in your exam preparation. My name is Manish Kosti sir. I am from Ahmedabad, India. Bye bye. Namaste.